This is a training session for an IV or an IQA. You're probably very familiar with the system already if you are an assessor and also an IQA. They lay out as under the same sort of principle, which is the home area is where you would see all of the assessors and all of the learners that you're looking after. Verify is where you would go to do some specific verification. Internal verifier tools is where you would prepare your sampling plan and also your rationale for your assessors. And then the reports area is exactly what it says. That's where you can go and look at the qualification tracker and other reports, which we'll come on to. The system will always open on the messaging tab, and if there's any message that we need to let you know about, you'll find it in this area here. So if for any reason, usually weekends and at night time, the system is going to be down, we'll ask you to log out and save all your work by a certain time so that we can conduct any system updates to refresh the system for you. The To-Do tab for the IV is somewhere where you can treat it as your inbox. So if there's anything for you to do, you'll find it in this area here, and it's divided into sections. A couple of examples are evidence saved for further work. This is something that you're currently in the process of verifying, and you need to go back and complete that particular piece of verification work. You'll also get notifications in this area here of any sampling plan dates that are due up and coming in the next 5 days. And if you wish to go and sample those particular pieces of work, use the hyperlink at the end, sample, it will take you to that particular unit so that you can sample straight away. In the information tab, you'll find things like units that have been signed off in the last 30 days, but you'll also find things in there like any work that you return to the assessor. You've asked them to action something before they return it back to you again for verification. You would see a reminder of that in this area here. Learner Progress Summary will give you an overview by assessor of all of your learners. So if we select an assessor, we can see all of the learners that are associated with that particular assessor and how they're all doing. You can see which qualifications they've been assigned, what percentage through the qualification they are, start date, end date, and based on the speed that they're currently going, how many more days they might need to be on programme. If we go to the Internal Verifier Tools area and go to the End tab, it's the rationale. Now, rationale is normally a RAG rating, red, amber, green, for an assessor. You would have a rationale for every assessor that you looked after as a verifier. And that rationale would be based on the competence of that particular assessor. So, for example, if you've got a very experienced assessor who maybe has been assessing for 10 years or so, you may just attribute the sampling strategy for your centre to that particular assessor. So it might be 15%. If you have a brand new assessor and you don't really know what their assessing is like, you can create a rationale which shows that in the first 6 weeks, for example, you might actually verify 100% of the work that they assess. These are previous rationales that have been created, and we would create a new rationale underneath. Most centres have a rolling rationale so that you come here and you review it every so often. So the summary of the title, can I suggest that that would be the assessor's name? And the start date can be backdated if you need it to start earlier in the year. And the target date is really the review date. So when do you want to look at this particular one? So if Jo is a new assessor, we might want to review any work that she's done by the end of July. So we would select a date of the end of July. That means that we will get a reminder in our To-Do tab to say that rationale that you set for Jo is due for revising. And then in the rationale intentions, we can write whatever we like. So we can do 100% of all assessed work. We would then upload any files if we needed to at this particular stage, but actually that could be it. We would then save that rationale. So this is the rationale that we've just created. At any time, we can go in and edit that rationale. Might have some feedback and conclusions. The only time we would normally complete it is if that assessor subsequently leaves. So we put a tick in the box there and then add a date when they have actually left the organisation. Once again, we can save it. You'll see underneath here there's an audit trail, and the audit trail is quite comprehensive for rationale areas. So we can now see that that's when I created a new rationale. I changed some of the intentions, I completed it, and then added it. So you can see this particular one, this is what I wrote, 100% of all assessed work. That's what I wrote on that particular occasion. So you would normally have a rationale for every one of your assessors. If you share that assessor, there may well be more than one rationale, and those rationales can actually be created by other IVs. So if SID is being looked after by another IV, you can actually see the rationales for SID that are on the system entered by other IVs. The internal verifying sampling plan is an area where you would go to create your sampling plan for the future. So you would select the qualification, you need to choose one that's got a learner against it. And the plan will then show all of the learners. In this particular case, there's just one learner recorded against this assessor. You can actually do a sampling plan for all assessors that are delivering a particular qualification as well. You can also further define by an employer, or you can just look at a single learner. In this case, we only have a single learner by default, but in normal circumstances, we may have 20 learners that are listed underneath this particular assessor. Now, the sampling plan is only your intentions, and it's only a plan. If you know that you're going to sample crystally on one particular day, but you don't know what unit you're actually going to sample, you can use the whole qualification column. Normally looks like this when you first come here, and then you would tick to say that you plan to sample that on a particular day, and in the date column you would write a date when you plan to sample the whole qualification. You can select a type, which is either an interim or a final sample, and then from the assessment cycle you can select any of these selections. If you select evidence methods, it then allows you to click to select which particular methods in particular you might want to look at. So you might want to look at professional discussions and maybe witness testimonies that are submitted for this particular qualification. You may wish to look at assessment planning, progress reviews, do an observation of an assessor, or sampling strategy may cover all of the above. So if you click on sampling strategy, you can perhaps use the notes area to write what your intentions are for that particular one, if you're not looking at any one thing in particular, but you're looking at a whole range of things. If you use the other, we do recommend that you use the notes area so that any EV coming along afterwards can see what your intentions are if you record it as other. That's how you note your intentions to sample. If you know which units the learner is going to be doing, you can plan to sample a specific unit. Exactly the same way, you plan to sample, pop a date in the box, add any notes that you wish to, select whether or not it's an interim or a final, and then again from the assessment cycle you can select another thing. When you save this, your intentions will be saved to that sampling plan. What you will also get is you will get a notification on your to-do tab to say you intended to sample on the 23rd of the 6th, so you get a notification in your to-do tab then. If you have a series of learners listed and you would like to do some sort of diagonal pattern across, or maybe just have a quick look at see which units have already been sampled or which ones need to be sampled, you can use the world picture here. It will then produce a pop-up which will give you a big overview of that particular sampling plan. The turquoise one is the whole qualification column, and then you can see which units have been assigned to the learners and which ones haven't. Where there is a yellow band across it, there is a notice of intention to sample. This one is green underneath here because it's one that we have already sampled. If it had a dark blue splash across the bottom here, it would mean that that unit had not been sampled, but it had been signed off. So that's our sampling plan. If we wish to go ahead and sample, from the sampling plan we can click on the click to sample, and that will take us to that particular unit, 202, and will allow us to select the evidence in 202 to sample. There's only one piece here. Here is the piece of evidence. Do not use this link here to go to verify that piece of work. Always use the verify hyperlink here. If you select this, it will take you to a read-only and you will not be able to open up the criteria or make any comments on that piece of work. So please note that you should use the verify tab here. So here is the unit. We can see that this particular piece of evidence hit direct observation and also oral questioning and met these 4 criteria. So if we select verify for this particular piece of work, it takes us to the evidence page. We can see it's a direct observation and oral questioning. We can see the date that it was created, its title. In the description we've got see attached, so we've got a document in here. We can see the audit trail as well, so we're able to see who loaded it. In this instance we can see that it's the assessor in both instances. Sometimes you might be able to see that it was loaded by a learner, sent to an assessor, the assessor returned it to the learner resubmitted it to the assessor. So you see again a full audit trail of how that piece of work eventually ended up with the verifier. If the piece of work was a witness statement, for example, you too as the verifier would be able to see the name and email address, telephone number of the witness for that particular piece of work. The assessor will have seen this as well, and they may well have contacted the witness to verify that particular piece of work. In the criteria met section down at the bottom, you can see if the learner had had a go at mapping this piece of evidence to criteria, any ticks that they did would appear in this first box here. The second box is the assessor's mapping of this particular piece of evidence. You cannot untick any of the ticks that the assessor has done. If you have any comments to make, you would put them in the internal verify comments book, perhaps challenging some of the assessing decisions, some of the ticks that they've done. If you're looking at this piece of work in respect of only this unit 202, which in this particular case that is the only evidence that has been ticked off, you would put a tick in the box to say, yes, I'm looking at this piece of evidence in respect of unit 202. If there were other units that had criteria mapped, but you were not interested in verifying it in respect of those pieces of evidence, you would not put a tick in the box of those particular units as well. You would just put them in the one that you've done. If you don't put a tick in any of the boxes, the system assumes that you are verifying the whole piece of work regardless of where the ticks come from. And actually when you come to save this particular document, you will get a pop-up saying, click OK if you wish to continue without marking any units as sampled. And that's in instances where you have not selected the unit and specified what you are verifying. If you do tick one of those boxes and mark as verified, you do not get that pop-up. It just verifies that piece of work, and you'll see that that piece of work was sampled on that date, which is what we've just done. If you were coming to sign off this particular unit, this is where you would find it. In the unit status page, you can see the qualification, you can see all of the units, and in this area here you can see which of the units have been signed off by the assessor and which, if required, have been signed off by the learner and then verified, and we can see this one was actually sampled. If we wish to sign off this particular unit, we would select it and view progress. And we would look at any evidence, methods, make sure all the criteria had been met. And then we would come down to this area here as the internal verifier, write our feedback in here, tick all of these boxes here, and either select the unit not sampled or confirm that you have sampled in that particular area. Now, the reason that this is all greyed out and the reason why I, as the verifier, cannot sign this off is because my assessor has not signed it off. If my assessor had signed it off, all these boxes would be white. I would be able to populate them all and sign off this particular unit. But I can't do it yet because my assessor hasn't signed it off. When we're ready to sign off a qualification, we can go to this area here. Once again, you have the qualification name, and if you select a qualification and view progress, you get a very similar view to the one that we just looked at in the unit status. Here is the qualification again, here are all the units, and here are the details of whether or not they've been sampled or signed off. And once again, if we're signing off the qualification, we would just tick this box here and save it and sign off that particular qualification. The kind of things that you might be looking at in here if you are doing your sampling is the first thing that you might look at is unit assignments. What units have been assigned to the learner for the qualification? Are they the correct units? Have the rules of combinations been met? Is the credit value of all the units assigned to the learner sufficient to claim for that qualification having been completed once done? You might look at assessment plans from this particular area as well. Have a look at any assessment plans. If any of these assessment plans have been completed and signed off, these ticks would be green. Here's an example of a tick that is green. So these assessment plans have been signed off. You can look at any of the assessment plans. Have a look at the date. Have a look at any comments. See if the learner has confirmed that they've received this particular assessment plan. You can have a look at the assessment criteria that this plan is designed to meet. And you can also have a look at any files that might have been uploaded to this particular assessment plan. In this instance, there aren't any. If the assessor has written their feedback, it would be in this area here, and they would also have ticked this to sign off this particular assessment plan, and that would then make that green tick on the previous page go green. The evidence list is the paper portfolio, and you can come here and you can verify from this area here if you wish. Here's all the evidence, so we can view it or re-verify it. If your centre is using progress reviews, this is where you can come and look at the progress reviews that have occurred. Using the hyperlink at the end view, you can have a look at any of those progress reviews. Anything that is not evidence will be recorded in the learner activity log, and as an IV, you can not only look and edit any of the logs that are already in there, you can also create a new one. In the reports area, there is a qualification tracker, as you would have seen as an assessor, and you can view the qualification tracker. And on this one you can see who the learner is, who the assessor is, which qualification they're doing, and you're able to see quite visually whether or not they're green or red, on target to finish by their expected end date, or lagging behind. If you click anywhere in this particular area, you can then use your right arrow and scroll across, have a look at percentage completion, sign-off date if they've been signed off, start date, end date, etc. If you also stipulate the dates a little better at the previous stage, you can actually see a month-on-month improvement on completion of the qualification for each of the learners. This concludes the internal verifier getting started section.